All right. So we're here as always,
Yep.
Matthew and then Michael.
Hi.
We are the co-hosts of Behind Net Podcast. And we're doing this kind of, I don't know what to call it. We did it when the Raptors got eliminated last season.
Yeah.
Um and not really an emergency podcast, but more like a reaction podcast, mini bonus episode type thing. We're still gonna have a weekly episode.
Yeah.
Um but this is extra. This is the reaction. It is Monday, 10:08 p.m. right now.
hmm
Um, the Toronto Maple Leafs just lost to the Montreal Canadiens 3-1 in game 7 of the first round. And yeah, we're gonna we're gonna kind of break it down.
hmm
This is raw. Like I literally told Michael, like we planned this obviously, but
Yeah.
we said like let's just jump on, you know. Um this is gonna be raw thoughts. And yeah, like I just gotta know, Michael, like what are you feeling right now?
I don't feel anything to be completely honest with you. I really don't. Well, I mean, that's not true. While the game was happening, I was getting very animated, very upset with what I was seeing. And I was watching a Leafs team that was not playing with a sense of desperation. They were not playing like they were trying to keep their season alive. We didn't see that till the last 5 minutes. And when they scored that old Nylander scored that goal, it's like, okay, who cares?
Mm.
Like, where was that desperation before? They should have been playing with the desperation from the get-go. Like they're playing like a team that thinks everything can come easy to them, that they're going to coast their way to victory. Their skill is going to show up at time and time again, and it just doesn't work that way. I don't know really like how else to explain it. Like this Leafs team continues to find ways to disappoint us each and every single year. And I think this fan base has reached a breaking point because there's been 5 years of this, five, where this Leafs team has a good regular season, makes the playoffs, and doesn't make it past the game 7 of the first round. Like, what more do you want me to say? Like,
Yeah.
I don't blame Leaf fans for jumping ship because this team, at least the way that this series played out after the Leafs went up 3-1, gives them every reason to not want to watch this team anymore.
Literally what you said. I mean, it's not just this game, it's the whole series, but not even the whole series. It's the whole this generation of the Leafs. Um, I don't know. Like, there's multiple factors. If we're going into first thing we have like on our list of, we're going raw in this video, just kind of raw thoughts, but we have a guideline set, and we want to talk about like what went wrong. But honestly, it's so hard to pinpoint what went wrong. It's just, you hate to say like it's a curse on the Toronto Maple Leafs or anything like that, but I don't understand. Like it's this team, what now? Now it's 0-8 in elimination games with this era of Leafs, with this core since 2016 when they first made, well, 2017, because when 2016, that was their first taste of the playoffs against the Washington Capitals in
Mm-hmm.
2017. So I guess we're talking about 2018 with elimination games, but
Yeah.
um yeah, no, and I don't get it. Even going back to 2013, the dreaded 2013, that kind of that kind of bad, I don't want to say just bad luck, but that kind of, I don't know. Maybe it goes back to the culture. It's just the Leafs don't have a winning culture around them right now. There's a lot of pressure on this team, on this city, on this franchise, and it definitely gets to the players. But it's just, I don't get it. Like you can't like script bad luck. If hockey was scripted, like this is like you can't even script it this badly for a team. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is like first round exit after first round exit. And when you think it can't get worse, they blow a 3-1 lead, which is literally the joke of blowing leads in sports. 3-1 lead. Like we know the Golden State Warriors did it. And that was the biggest joke. But it's literally that's the worst possible thing that could happen to these Leafs. Like first round exit year after year, sure. But then, you know, and in our prediction, we said it could go 6 or 7, but we never thought it would be go up 3 and then blow it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't get it. What went wrong? I can't pinpoint it. I know there's a lot of pressure on this, like I said, on this team, on this franchise, and it's hard for players. I think we're seeing it. It's hard for players to play here, although they love it. And I just think it's a lack of a winning culture, winning in the regular season, but it's just hard to explain. And yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the fan base. And like, I can't wrap my head around, because like I said, you can't script it any worse for a team. And they're coming out with a documentary, and honestly, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Do you want to watch it?
It's not going to have a happy ending. They're going to change the narrative. Maybe Amazon scripted this whole season and they wanted it to play out like that. I don't know.
Well, let me throw out some numbers just to put into perspective. Well, one, how young this team is, and 2, how upsetting it is to watch this team in series deciding games. Number 1, since 2019, the Leafs have played in only 4 or I think 5 games with a chance to move on to the next round. And they've lost all 5 of them. And you're right. You could also count 2018 and 2017, that's 7. And then 2013, that's 8. But since 2019, the Leafs have only been up, had 4 games. 4. That was game 5, game 6. Actually, no, I meant 3. Game 5, game 6 this year, and game 6 2 years ago, where they had a chance to move on. That's only the first time that this has happened for them, where they actually have the lead and they have a chance to move on, and they just don't know how to close it out. It's a lack of a killer instinct. It's a lack of maturity. It's a lack of experience. And I honestly do think it's a lack of scoring. And I'm going to say it. They should have gotten Taylor Hall. But that's another question we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But I want to point out something. Since 2019, so that we're talking 3 winner take all games. The Leafs have scored now a combined 2 goals. That's a John Tavares goal, I think, in the first period of game 5, 7 2 years ago. And William Nylander scoring in garbage time.
They were shut out last year, right, against the Blue Jackets in game 5.
Yeah. That's 2 goals. That is for a team that claims to have a lot of offensive firepower, that claims to be one of the best offensive units in the league, that claims to have one of the best power play units on paper, that claims to be a well-oiled machine. That is unacceptable. You know what else is unacceptable? It's only scoring 3 power play goals in this series. 3. And I know a lot of Leaf fans are calling for Manny Malhotra's head because of the way that he constructed the Leafs power play and how the power play was so inept after about mid-March. And they only scored 3 goals. Like, what a wasted opportunity this all is. I just think that's the perfect way to describe it. It's a wasted opportunity. This is the most embarrassing loss the Leafs have had. Yeah, even more embarrassing than the Zamboni driver loss. Even more embarrassing than blowing a 5-1 lead to the Senators. It's all embarrassing. And I don't know how many more embarrassing losses this team needs to face before they figure it out. Because it's just frustrating to watch.
Yeah. And like going back to elimination games, this team, I don't know, they get the jitters when they're up, when they have that pressure to close out a series. And this was shown completely this series, and it's bad. It's bad. It's like they don't even, games 2, 3, 4. We saw the Leafs that are like, they weren't scared of the Habs at all. And then it just flipped. And honestly, I want to say, like, obviously we covered the Toronto Maple Leafs, but we watched some good hockey from both teams here. Like, props to the Habs. Carey Price, man, like there were questions surrounding him all season for the last few seasons. And when it comes to playoff time, like, he shows up like no goalie ever. Like, it was crazy. The Leafs had a lot of trouble against Carey Price, and huge props to him. Of course, Jack Campbell played amazing, but Carey Price really came clutch when they needed him to come clutch, and he stole a series. He really did. So props to him for that. We saw a lot of good hockey, and it really was when you're looking at it, like, from both sides, it was a great series. The Toronto Maple Leafs came out on the short end of the stick, and yeah, they really let the pressure get to them. And yeah, when we're going back to what went wrong, I know you mentioned, you wish that the Leafs had acquired Taylor Hall because, yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. Right now, it looks like that lack of offense is what kind of killed the Leafs, of course. I don't know. I don't know if I could agree completely with that. I know it would have been nice to have Taylor Hall, but at the same time, offense wasn't the problem going into the playoffs. It wasn't the biggest problem. It's just you go into the playoffs and, you had a Rocket Richard trophy winner score one goal. And, Mitch Marner, who literally is a point per game player, not even come up with a goal in 7 games. And those are your 2 highest paid players on the roster. Mm-hmm. You can't blame Kyle Dubas for that. He built a roster that I honestly, not even on paper, even before during the season, was so dominant. Nick Foligno just added to that. Taylor Hall or not, they just kind of disappeared. Can't blame Kyle Dubas for that. And I really hope we'll get to this part later, of course, but I really hope the blame doesn't fall on Dubas because I really do think he built a contender. It's just, again, I don't know what's wrong with this team, but it's just that losing culture, that pressure. It's pressured. It's a pressured culture, and they have to figure it out. They have a lot of learning to do, even though you bring in these vets who are great, of course. Jason Spezza played amazing this series. Even Joe Thornton chipped in a goal. Wayne Simmons was physical as what he was brought in to do. And yeah, like they just couldn't figure out when the time came. And that's something they'll have to figure out. And we say this time and time again, and I don't know how they'll figure out because really, I don't know what'll kind of push the needle forward, but something has to change that in terms of the whole culture, in terms of what this core is able to do and what they know to do.
Well, at some point you have to question if this core is even going to do anything because we've had 5 years, like I said, 5 years of playoff experience with this group, and they have nothing to show for it. Like, at what point do you decide to just cut bait and make a big change? Like, we're talking Masai Ujiri making a big gamble to change the culture of the Raptors kind of move. That's where we're at right now. Like, that's what the Leafs need to do because you're right. It's simply unacceptable to have a Rocket Richard trophy winner and one of the top 5 scorers in the NHL or even top 10, I'm not too sure, go completely combine one goal in a 7-game series. It is simply unacceptable. Your best players needed to be your best players, and they were not in this series. It is simply unacceptable that Matthews and Marner did not get it done, and they absolutely deserved all the criticism that they're going to be getting this summer for not coming through. And I think that's what the answer really is here. The Montreal Canadiens just took advantage of a lot of mistakes that the Leafs made in Game 5 and Game 6 and Game 7. It is that simple. The Leafs played a solid game. Like, they had a solid game plan for the first 4 games, like giving Montreal absolutely nothing. And their confidence was at an all-time low, it felt like. So what changed? Well, Montreal, I think, just played a calmer game. And they were able to dictate play through the last 3 games of this series. And the Leafs failed to adjust, which I also think is a big problem. Because what Montreal was trying to do was clog up the middle of the ice and make it hard for the Leafs star players to do anything. And the Leafs failed to try and force the entry. Like, what I say by that is if the puck is on the ball, you try and force your way to the middle. Sure, you might get hit by some guy or you may get a low percentage shot, but it's better than just moving the puck around and just hoping that you're going to get a shot off. Like, that's not a recipe for success. Like, how can you tell me that this Leafs team can't, for the life of them, figure out how to make mid-game adjustments? We thought we got a coach that does make mid-line adjustments, but clearly the players don't know how to adjust mid-game. Like I don't know what to say. And here's the worst part. When it was clear as day that Mitch Marner was not getting enough done offensively, and yet you have William Nylander, who was your leading point scorer in the playoff, like for your team, not getting as many minutes and only occasionally playing with Austin Matthews. Like, that's a spot where I would also get upset. That's what also went wrong. The Leafs did not make the calculated adjustment of putting in William Nylander in Mitch Marner's place, because I think at some point you have to make a big shakeup, and that's the kind of thing that makes a big shakeup. Because I just don't know. Like Sheldon Keefe has to take some responsibility for this series loss. His job is certainly safe. I'm not questioning. I'm not saying fire Sheldon Keefe or foul Kyle Dubas, because you're right. Sheldon, like, what else is Kyle Dubas supposed to do other than maybe trading for Taylor Hall? Like, it's all on the players. And because it's all on the players, there has to be big changes. And because enough's enough.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask you, like, what's your criticism on Sheldon Keefe? And you pretty much put it spot on. You know, he is a coach, or he was brought in as a coach that would, you know, everyone thought would adapt, and he does adapt. But like you said, I think the biggest kind of hole in his strategy was William Nylander didn't get a lot of time with Austin Matthews, and it's not like they don't have chemistry together, because we've seen that for the first 3-4 years of their career. Yeah. But ultimately it does. I'm not saying it's blame, but ultimately the criticism falls on the players. Yeah, it's just simply put, you know, they couldn't adapt to what Montreal was throwing at them. And of course, Carey Price was standing on his head, but you cracked him before. And what the Leafs are, I think their record against the Habs this season was like 7-2-1. Like that's a huge, you let them win twice. Well, 3 times if you're including that overtime win. I think it's around there. I don't actually have the exact number, but somewhere around there. I know they got 7 wins though, for sure. And just struggling in that sense, especially in the goals department, and struggling to adjust. There were a lot of defensive lapses too, a lot throughout this series. I mean, just look at was it the Game 5 overtime winner? Sloppy plays. We've seen sloppy plays, sloppy giveaways all throughout this series at the worst times. And this team cracks under pressure. It's simply that. And I don't know what we could do. And I guess it's time to kind of move into, we kind of went over what went wrong and kind of who's to blame. But I mean, what does this kind of mean for the Leafs? What does this loss mean for the Leafs? Because obviously this is the 5th straight year of going to the playoffs, 4th straight year going to an elimination game, as in the final game of a series, and not being able to close out. What does this mean for the Leafs? Of course, and the blown lead 3-1, which is just an embarrassment overall. You know, yeah, like how big of an impact is this on this core, this franchise, this culture that they have going right now?
I'm going to be repeating myself here, and I apologize if I am, but what I'm saying is pretty much the truth. What does this loss mean for the Leafs? It's not working. It's time for a change. I'm sorry. It's time to make a big shakeup, because it's not working. Like, it's simply not working. And I don't think the fan base has the patience to wait anymore. Like, we've waited 54 years to see a Leafs team that was good enough to win a Stanley Cup. We've waited 17 years to watch a Leafs team that was good enough to advance to the second round of the playoffs or beyond. And we're not seeing any of that. Like, great, you won a division title. Great, you had a player that won the Rocket Richard Trophy. That's fantastic. Doesn't matter, because you can't do the one thing that everyone was looking towards when this season started. The regular season did not matter. All that mattered was how this Leafs team did in the playoffs, and they get a straight up F because they failed. There's no way around it. So what does this loss mean? You have to make a change. So I'm looking at the core. I'm looking at the big 4 players. You've invested a lot of money, over almost half your roster's salary cap in. And I have to think, Kyle Dubas has to think long and hard about who should be kept, because you're not trading away William Nylander after the playoffs he had. You're certainly not trading away John Tavares, because it's not really his fault. He only played for about 10 minutes of that first game, and that's about it. And Austin Matthews, he's the best player on this team, and he can come through in the playoffs.
Arguably a top 3 player this season too.
Yeah. So I'm looking at Mitch Marner, I'm looking at that contract and I'm saying to myself, that's the guy that needs to go. You know what would be crazy? If they expose Mitch Martin in the expansion draft. Because that would probably be the best thing to happen for this team, to just let
I
him
don't know
get.
about going that far. That's like getting no value out of your
Well, why
biggest
would
asset.
they
But
want to get value out of Mitch Marner when he's shown that his value in the playoffs is at like not it's below zero. It's not, it's in the negatives how what his value is in the playoffs. So what I'm trying to say is this Leafs team has to look long and hard at themselves. And if they're not going to trade Mitch Marner, you have to change the way the team is constructed. You need to make a big change because it's just not working as it is right now. And Kyle Dubas has to wear this loss on his sleeve because he put a lot of investment into this team. Like, it was pretty much his construction, the team that he really wanted, and playing the style that he was envisioning them playing, and they still lost. So if I'm Kyle Dubas, I have to change my philosophy. I have to change the way I have to change the way you'd approach free agency, what players you'd go after, what moves you'd make. And you need to change the makeup of this team because it's not simply about getting veterans that can calm everybody down. You need players that want to that play pissed off. They want to play players that want to wake up guys. We thought that'd be Wayne Simmons, but he didn't do that. We thought it'd be Nick Foligno, but he didn't do that. We thought it'd be Joe Thornton, he didn't do that. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, there has to be changes. There has to be a drastic change, or else it's just gonna be a waste of our times next year. We're gonna be sitting here in 2022 talking about the same thing. Oh, well, the Leafs had a great regular season, but they just couldn't do it in the first round again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I'm going to go about this question the same way. I mean, first, what does it mean for the Leafs? It means a lot. Like we said, I mean, yeah, the last few years, literally 2 years ago, let's go back to the Boston and Toronto series in 2019. You know, that was kind of the needle mover to, that pushed Mike Babcock out of Toronto. Obviously not immediately, but that was the catalyst. That was what everyone thought first was the needle mover, was change the coach. Then it happened again. And then we were asking the same thing. What does this mean for the Leafs? A major change has to come. And it was change the makeup of the team, as in bring in veterans, bring in physical players, bring in all those things. Didn't work again. So what does it mean now for the third or fourth time we've been asking this question? And this time it hits the hardest. I think it hits this core the hardest. It hits Kyle Dubas the hardest, is because you don't know what the problem is. It's harder to pinpoint a problem this time. Like you said, something has to change, but like what? It's not as apparent because Kyle Dubas, and this is why I say Kyle Dubas, if anyone was to go, it should not be Kyle Dubas. And I really hope, because let's face it, the easiest people to replace on a dysfunctional team is the coach or the GM, right? But I really don't think Kyle Dubas is a problem because, like we mentioned before, he went out and fixed every hole that logically was there to be fixed, and they couldn't get it done. It's the exact same result.
Let me mention something since you have a second. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, the Leafs players got the coach they wanted, they got the GM they wanted, and they got some of the tools they wanted, like you said. So if none of that fixes the problem, then like I said, you got to fix the core. Yeah. The core is now the problem.
Yeah. That's what I was going to get into. And now I know we make, for any strictly hockey viewers watching, we make a lot of cross sport references, especially to, basketball as well. Anyone who watches both the Raptors and the Leafs here, you'll get it, of course. But you mentioned a kind of Masai Ujiri type move. And we know, going back to 2018 when the Raptors traded DeMar DeRozan. I mean, just to give a little history on the Toronto Raptors, they were in, I wouldn't say this kind of rut like the Leafs, but they were known as chokers as well, because they had a consistent top of the East, top of the league team that would choke in the playoffs. Now, it wasn't this bad. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals once, and they would get to the second round. They would just get killed by LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were known as playoff chokers, and they needed something to move the needle. And it wasn't so much as blowing up a team, but it was trading away your best player for a superstar, and that was DeMar DeRozan traded for Kawhi Leonard. And as we all know, they went on to win the NBA championship, and Kawhi Leonard was the Finals MVP. Yeah, and then he left, whatever. But I've been thinking about this a lot, and I hear it so much times. We've heard this the last 2 years, I guess, when the Raptors won and then the Leafs still lost. It was, they need to make a big change to the core like that. But I wish it was that easy, because in hockey, it's just the trade market is just not that easy. You don't get a superstar that can move the needle like that become available. So I am saying, yeah, something needs to be done to that degree. I don't know if it's one player or if it's two players, because again, on a hockey team, it's a much bigger core. It's not like one player could change a lot more on a basketball team than one player could change on an NHL team, and maybe a couple players maybe a shakeup needs to happen. And I think, yeah, you're right. I'm not saying to trade Mitch Marner or anything, but when you look at the roster, Austin Matthews, I've been thinking, like, how long did it take Alex Ovechkin? Of course, he wasn't in the same like predicament as the Leafs. They made deeper playoff runs pretty quickly. But it took him a while too. But again, even with that, over time, the core had to change. The core had to change quite drastically. And who moves that needle? You look at the roster. I don't think William Nylander should go. One, people are going to say, I mean, it's kind of obvious because he has a cheaper contract, so he's easier to move out. But he showed up, and I think Kyle Dubas knows that he is great value for his contract. And you don't want to just drop him like that. I think you can get more value out of Mitch Marner. I think he is the player that you kind of look at as he still has value, and teams would still want him. It is harder to move that contract for sure. He has like the third, fourth highest contract in the NHL. That's tough to move. But at the same time, you have to look at the other end. Who do you trade him for? There's no straight up. It's not like the NBA where there's players like star players asking out, wanting out. It's not like that. You can't just get and it would take that. It would take Mitch Marner or someone of that caliber to be swapped out for a completely different star player that could bring something completely different to the team. And it really does take that. And maybe, like I said, maybe a shakeup to the defensive core. I don't know, but I would think Austin Matthews, yeah, he didn't live up to the expectations that were set on him after such a successful season, but he's still the centerpiece of the team. And I think you still build around him. It's just, what kind of core do you build around him? Yep. Yeah. And I think I'm not even drawing a complete conclusion here, because I cannot pinpoint a problem or a solution for this team. But when you think about something has to change, like, it really is like becoming, I really think it is like, not maybe blow up the team is kind of pushing it, but in a way blow up the core. And you think about who you're surrounding Austin Matthews with. And I'd say I'd love to see William Nylander and John Tavares in there, but at the same time, you don't know. Like Frederick Anderson, he's probably out as well. I think it's Jack Campbell's time now. You're seeing a change in net. Are we going to see a change in the defensive core? Are we going to see a change from Morgan Riley? Are we going to see those kind of changes? Where's everyone going to end up, and how are we going to see the Leafs move the needle?
I'll give you a crazy idea that might fix this Leafs team. You trade Mitch Marner to the Columbus Blue Jackets, because they were one of the teams that actually put it in an offer sheet for him. And you try and get back Seth Jones and Patrick Laine.
Patrick Laine's value is probably low right now too.
Mm-hmm. And Seth Jones wants out of Columbus. So I don't know. That might work.
I honestly think it would take, something to that degree, like a complete shift in player type, and just kind of working around your assets. It's things like that, because things like those, you don't want to see those types of players leave or be traded away, and then it could potentially backfire on you. But in the end, like that's sports. You have to take those risks. You have to do that. We kind of started it, but yeah, we'll start to close out. But where do the Leafs go from here? We kind of hinted at, where they go from here, but where do you think they go from here? I guess into the offseason. Let's start from the back out. We already know Jack Campbell. We've been mentioning him, getting the reins moving forward. What happens to Frederik Andersen? Do they just let him walk?
Well, we already know that Frederik Andersen's gone. We already know that that's the big part of your team gone. But you're finding every way that you possibly can to keep Zach Hyman on board. Try and keep Zach Bogosian as well, because he played very well despite not scoring a goal. If Jason Spezza still wants to keep going, which I think he does, and he still has it at 38, because I just don't think, if he's not going to stay with the Leafs, he's not going anywhere else. He threatened retirement this year when he was put on waivers. So that tells me that Jason Spezza wants to be here. And I think the Leafs will try to keep him here if he still wants to play. Joel Thornton can hang up the skates, because I just don't think he has it, and he really can't keep up anymore.
And it sucks because it would have been so amazing to see him lift the cup, because he deserved that, not just as a Leaf, but any point in his career. Like, I wish he won with San Jose.
Yeah, well, obviously, I'd love to see Joel Thornton win a Stanley Cup, and would have been nice for him to do it with the Leafs, but clearly, it's like, he could come back, but like, how can you even expect him to be anywhere near an NHL player next year? Like, if this is what Joe Thornton's gonna be like at 41, I don't even know what to expect him at age 42. It's tough to see. I think Joe Thornton's time in the NHL is done. So there's one thing that's going to change. And like I said, there's going to be a big trade. There's going to be a big move that shakes up the franchise and forces the identity of the Leafs to change drastically. Because like I said, how it's working right now is just not good enough. And Kyle Dubas needs to really look at options to blow up, like take one core piece away. And like I said, it has to be Mitch Marner, because you're not trading away Matthews. You're keeping William Nylander, and John Tavares is one hell of a captain. So Mitch Marner needs to go. I'm sorry. Like, that needs to be the goal of this offseason. Trade away Mitch Marner and shake up the identity of this team, because the identity of this team right now is that they're losers, and that the legacy of Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, their area in Toronto, is failure after failure. So I'm sorry. It's just time to change it. I hate to repeat myself here, but it's true. It's time to change.
Yeah, no, I was gonna literally, identity is the bottom line. I think moving the needle is one thing, and changing the identity. I have another question, but yeah, on your point, a change has to happen. I want to mention, like, I don't know, like, it's so tough. Like, we say blow up the team, but a part of my mind is also telling me, and I know we're going along with this episode, but part of my mind is also telling me, it's because of the situation they're in. It is still fairly young in there, in like the Austin Matthews era. It's really young. It's really early, and it's a lot of it is the result of a really accelerated rebuild. They got lucky with John Tavares. They were able to accelerate the rebuild a lot quicker than, most rebuilds are able to go. Now, of course, there are the rebuilds that were successful pretty quickly. Sidney Crosby won the Stanley Cup, 4 years into his career. Started 05-06 season, won in the 08-09 season.
Yep.
But then you have, like I said, Ovechkin took a while. But sometimes I think it's because of that accelerated rebuild and the situation they found themselves in is making the playoffs every season, and still having the idea of blowing up the team. A part of me says maybe it's still a little too soon, but I agree something needs to change, because I think you look at like Edmonton. Connor McDavid is what now, 6 years into his career. they're not really moving the needle. It's only, and the pressure isn't on as much for them because they don't make the playoffs on a consistent basis, you know, but you still want to build around Connor McDavid with somewhat of the core that they have. Now that's a different thing in its own. And that was just a point I wanted to make is it really is hard because you don't know if you want to blow it up, but at the same time, it's very young. They are making mistakes. It's very young in this era. And it's just because of the accelerated rebuild that we sit in this situation that you want to win the cup right now. Right. Whereas where else do you, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner haven't even reached their prime and we're expecting them to win a Stanley Cup. You know, that's only happened with what, like Chicago, that's happened with a pair of superstar youngsters. But anyways, what I was going to go off of, I was going to ask this question. You were talking about free agency, getting Zach Hyman to stay, Jason Spezza, what's going to happen with them? Now we've been talking about the culture, the team's reputation, the identity of the team. Do you think Toronto is still going to be a free agent destination, or do you think this culture might leave a bad stain on the team for free agents? Because now it's kind of hard to get away from it's almost like a fact that the Leafs are not able to go past the first round. The teams want to, for the last few years, it was the players come here because they want to help change that. But now do you think players still want to come here?
I think they still want to come here. I think
that
the message is still the same.
Extent, though? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it has to be the same extent. It has to be the same extent that I can come here and I can fix this. That's what should be the selling point. It's not working for us. Help us fix it. It's really that simple. And like I said before, if there has to be changes, even if it's not trading Mitch Marner, something big needs to change. I just don't know what. I just don't know what else to think of besides trading Mitch Marner or even getting rid of Manny Malhotra and bringing in Bruce Boudreau, which is what I think a lot of Leaf fans would have loved to see, because look how it's worked with the power play. And we look at the power play with the Leafs under Manny Malhotra, it just did not work. Like I said, yeah, there has to be a change. But anyway, keep going.
Mm-hmm. No, I was going to say, yeah, like it made me think, like when I asked you that question, it makes me think it does lead. There is a stain kind of left on the Leafs reputation now more than other years, because this year kind of solidified that kind of mark on their reputation, that this team that has this losing culture right now. And I don't know if I was a free agent, I would love to, especially if I was free agent from Toronto or what, it would be nice to go and save a team. But at the same time, I don't think players always want to do that. Quick, like cross sport reference. Look at the New York Knicks. They had a losing culture and they're down in their series right now. And, I would still say, like, look, free agents, they weren't a free agent destination because players know that about the culture there. I'm not saying it's the same here. I'm just wondering if I don't know what's in the minds of free agents, but we'll just have to see, that's just something I was thinking about. I think we'll close it out and just, any thoughts to kind of leave the season. I thought the season was a success, but we said it all season, and you could watch our podcast episodes all season. We mentioned it so many times. We would always say, man, the Leafs are doing great, but we'll just have to see how they do in the playoffs. And we said this early as the beginning of the season, because the season, I don't care if they tanked the season and just came away with the very last seed, or if they, won the President's Trophy. It doesn't even matter. We needed to see them win a playoff series. And I think we saw the worst possible outcome that, like I said, it couldn't have been scripted worse, going up 3-1 and blowing it. It makes it so hard.
I will say this. I think the Leaf fan base is going to show the team and management how upset they are with their wallet, or maybe lack thereof. I would not be surprised if some people that have season tickets decide to cancel it. I would not be surprised if we do not see sellouts next year. Not just because of the fact that COVID might scare people from coming back into the building, but when everyone can fully do normal stuff again, I would not be surprised if the Leafs building is not full. That is the only way that's going to tell the Leafs management and the team itself that they're not happy, and they want changes. And I think that's what I think is going to happen. Don't be surprised if we see that. Because if the Leaf fan base doesn't, I don't know how else you can tell a team you're upset than that. Because if you just keep showing up, they're not going to think they're going to think everything's fine. There's no reason to change it. So, like I said, yeah, the fan base, I'm gonna not be surprised if we see lots of boos when they're there. If there's less fans than usual, and maybe some season ticket holders decide to cancel. Like this is the time where the Leafs fans need to show the team that they're upset and they want change.
Mm-hmm. I completely get that. Yeah, and just to reiterate kind of what we've been saying the whole time, changes will come. And now we enter off-season mode, a big off-season. If last season wasn't, the last two seasons were a big off-season, you know, saw Nazem Kadri traded. Last season's off-season was seeing a bunch of free agent signings. And this off-season, I don't know. Like we said, we don't know what holes the Leafs, or we don't know the problems and we don't know the exact solutions. And that's just what we'll have to see with what the Leafs choose to do. Yeah. But I think we'll end it off on that. I wanted to say thank you for anyone who's been listening to our our podcast all season. You know, this is kind of the off season. Raptors are in off season. We'll talk a lot about baseball this summer, but you know, the content won't be as frequent. But yeah, we just wanted to say thank you for tuning in all season. We'll still be coming out with content this summer. It's just, you know, it might not be as consistent with the lack of things going on in sports news, Toronto sports news. But yeah, really thank you for listening. Michael, do you have anything you want to say?
I'll just want to make one point since you mentioned about this being a big off season. I think this is going to be the biggest off season in Leafs franchise history, because how they respond to blowing a 3-1 series lead and what their moves are in the off season will dictate if this team is legit on trying to make big changes or if they're going to par their course. Because I think that's going to be the real indicator of how Leaf fans are going to feel coming into next season. I mean, they're obviously not going to feel good, but this is the biggest offseason in franchise history. So I'm very curious to see what will come of it and what the Leafs team looks like on the other side.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So yeah, once again, thank you for listening. Everyone could follow us on Twitter at Behind the Net Pod. Follow me on Twitter at Matt_Rodrigo_.
And you can follow me on Twitter at the Leafs IMO.
Mm-hmm. So thank you all for listening. You know, stay tuned for more off-season content, and yeah, we'll catch you soon.
Take care, guys.